Hello and greetings from Orlando, Florida. That's where I am. Luiz Lima here. You are on Kardec Radio, and this is Spiritism, a closer look. We do this program every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For comments and suggestions, you can always get to the contact through the contacts that we have on the bottom of the screen there. Our Facebooks, pages, YouTube, email, for comments, suggestions, and also to request topics so we can bring in here for discussion. Tonight, we are going to take a closer look at human legislation. Human legislation. This is right here on the Spirit's book. Okay, it's part of the first book of the Allan Kardec's Spiritist Codification. Spirit's book, part 3, is called The Moral Laws. In this part 3, we have chapter 8, called The Law of Progress. In this chapter 8, there's a segment of 4 or 5 questions. It's called The Progress of Human Legislation. That's what we're going to address today here. Human legislation. So, first of all, what exactly do we mean, or does Allan Kardec mean by human legislation? Legislation, law, human, us. Incarnated. So these are laws targeting incarnated humans, groups, societies, and so forth. So these are human laws. Human laws are used in different groups of people. It could be, a small group of people doing something on a club, on a city, residents of a city, residents of the states, or nation, citizens of a nation. There are several different needs for human laws, but that's what they target. They target spirits that are incarnated right now, which is different from what we call the natural law. Natural law is immutable. It's always the same for everyone. Those are God's laws, immutable, never change. Human laws, on the other hand, are variable. They change, they're moving targets, and they are progressive. Time goes by, and we feel as a society, as a group, small group, whatever, one of those that I mentioned to you, we feel the need to adjust these laws from time to time. So they are not immutable. They are variable. They are moving targets that we adjust as needed. So the first question comes up. If the natural law is immutable and we create human laws that are not immutable, why do we need them? Why don't we just follow the natural law altogether and forget about any other kind of law? Why are they needed? What's the purpose? And the answer given to us by these spirits is very simple. It has to do with our level of advancement, moral and intellectual advancement. The human legislation is in place to regulate these rights and duties that we have within a group, a society, a country, a city. They regulate rights and duties, and that is necessary because of the human passions. These laws, some of them, with time, due to evolution of the human being, they will be dropped, some of them. For example, we have laws today that were critical for society development, let's say 4,000 years ago, maybe 2,000 years ago. They're not in place any longer because they are no longer needed. Human evolution or the people got past that situation. They understand that this law is no longer needed. Everybody agrees on something, and that's it. That's why they are variable, because they tie into the evolution of the human being. So some societies have laws that others don't, because they are still going, they're both running at different levels of intellectual and moral development. So natural law versus human law. First of all, one is immutable, the other is not. And human laws are in place due to human passions that need to be controlled or educated. One way of educating is establishing laws. So, human legislation establishes the laws of a society. And social laws are still today, to this day, necessary, very necessary, I would say, due to the level of moral and intellectual advancement that we are on. This is trials and expiations. So these human laws, this human legislation, what is it based on? Natural law is based on the law of God. That's it. How about our law, the human laws? What are they based on? What is the reference that is used to create these laws? That's where the trouble begins. Because we are undergoing trials and expiations in which the earth is one of the appropriate places for spirits that must undergo trials and expiations. That's we're all here. And because of that, our level of advancement is not so great. So there are a lot of personal interests and advantages that people want, one over another. So these human laws, they are based on personal interests and advantages. They are written by people with that in mind. It is so that for the average law that we have, almost all of them, if you think about a law, there are exceptions. There are no exceptions in the natural law, God's law. He won't say, this is my law, but spirits on earth and using this or doing that, they are exempt. There's no such a thing. It's immutable, the same for everyone. Our laws need tweaking, adjustments. We have backdoors, we have exceptions, because ultimately they are written for people who base these laws on their personal interests and or advantages. And that complicates a lot. So who makes these laws? Who writes these laws? They are written by incarnated spirits for incarnated spirits. You will never see a law, a human legislation, human law, anywhere in the planet that would say something like this. You are not allowed to do this, but if you do, you go to jail for the rest of this life and the first 10 years of your next life. No such a thing. The law is written by incarnated spirits for incarnated spirits only. It does not consider life after death. It does not consider multiple lives. Nothing like this. So just by itself, it's very limited when you compare to the natural divine law, which considers that. So because they are written by incarnated spirits, and they can fail, they have troubles, they're undergoing trials and expiations just like the whole planet, just like the entire population of the planet. Because of that, they might not necessarily, depends on what it is, but they might require some sort of voting system to approve that law or those laws. And that works as a mechanism of control against abuses. So for the most part, It's not uncommon to vote on laws. It could, like I said, it could be a small group, it could be a whole country, it could be a state, doesn't matter. But because it's written by spirits that are under trial and expiations, most of the times it has to be revalidated by somebody else or another group. So it all goes back to the level of advancement. Now, think about this. Let's say that the spirit or spirits, let's just make it a group of incarnated spirits writing these laws. So, a small group of incarnated spirits are writing a law for something, say for a country. So, if you think about the number of people writing the law versus the number of the population of the country, it's going to be a small group, regardless of the country size. It's going to be really a small group. Now, what if good moral standards are not on their radar? What if these spirits writing these laws cannot grasp the idea of superior moral standards, higher moral standards? Don't even have to be close to Jesus, but much higher than where they are. For the most part, they can't see it. It's not achievable for them. So these laws are written at a very lower level of morality, unless from time to time these societies, people, and so are backed up or supported by very highly advanced spirits that show up on earth from time to time. Then it gets better a little bit. Otherwise, the moral standards used to write the laws are going to make the law not just. You see, the moral advancement improves as we approach true moral values. Otherwise, it's all going to be down the scale. Remember, we spoke about the spirit scale. So let's revisit history a little bit and see how we got into this mess here that we are. Everywhere. This is everywhere. It's not in a particular place, it's not a particular group. It is everywhere. The world is overcoming challenges in all different avenues, if you will. So, social law is one of them. So, let's just go back to before Moses. Before Moses, we had no 10 Commandments. All right. So, let's say I was just talking, just go back 6,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, before Moses. So, you're talking to somebody and you get into some sort of argument. It gets heated because there's no agreement. So, it gets a little bit heated. The easiest thing to do, and that's what happened all the time. The easiest thing to do is just get my sword and run through that person's body. And that's it. End of the story. And I go talk to somebody else. And they will do the same to me. That's before Moses. So killing, clears off that discussion. We're all done. Good. Let's go talk to somebody else. Then the 10 Commandments are presented to Moses. He brings it down to the population. And now those 10 Commandments will change the way should change the way we see and do things. Let's just pick one. I've spoken about this before here in our program. Let's just pick one that makes it very easy to understand. Don't kill. Well, don't kill. That's one of the 10 Commandments. When Moses brings those 10 Commandments and shows to the population doesn't like it. Because, you see, they would argue with Moses, how come I cannot kill? If I do this, at leisure, when I wanted, how I wanted. I just did maybe a couple this morning. How come I cannot kill now? So it's very hard for a person, an incarnated spirit, to take that easily. So Moses had to attach a lot of disciplinary laws. 613, I'm sorry, disciplinary laws that go along to support the original 10 commandments. So now we have 623 laws in place, 10 commandments plus 613 at the time called disciplinary laws. These laws will have its place in society. They are called now social laws. We call them social laws. So, for example, divine law is you can't kill. A social law would be something like this: you can kill, but if you kill, you go to jail, for example. So, once this is in place, and I'm talking to somebody, we get into an argument, and it gets heated, I'm not going to kill that person anymore. Not necessarily I'm not going to kill, but I'm going to think twice. Oh my God, if I, run my sword through this guy right here, or if I kill him, I'm going to go to jail, because that's what the disciplinary social law says. So it invites us to, think before doing anything, which is how we are going to address or support the moral value. So now my behavior, my attitudes will change, because there's a social law in place supporting a moral value. So you see that there's an order of things here. On the top you have the moral values. Then in here you have the social laws. Then in here you have the behavior / attitude. However, the people who make the law are not perfect. The people who make and write the social laws, the disciplinary laws, they are undergoing trials and expiations, just as we are. So they make mistakes. So let's say, for example, that I am one of those people. I wrote the law. So the law now is you can kill. If you kill, you go to jail. That's the social law. But then I'm a very influential person. I wrote the law and I kill somebody. Doesn't matter what the reason is. I just kill somebody. According to the law, I should be in jail, should be put in jail. But that's not going to happen, because I wrote the law, and or I am a very influential person, and I'm not going to go to jail. I'm going to tweak things. I'm going to tailor to my needs. So now the new law is you can kill. If you kill, you go to jail. However, if it's your first crime, nothing happens. You don't go to jail. You're forgiven. You see, so now we have a law in place that is not supporting any moral values above it. It's supporting a behavior below it. The social law now is responding to a behavior, to an attitude, not to a moral value. With these laws in place, and time goes, and generations come and go, these laws are established. They become supported by populations. And now what we have is false moral values that are a result of social laws, which are in turn results of our wrong behavior. And that's where we are today. So we have laws today that are frontally against the divine moral value brought to us, moral values. And that's why. Because the lawmakers undergoing trials and expiations is not criticism, that's all of us. The lawmakers don't have visibility enough in terms of intellectual and moral development. It's not academic instruction, it's not it. intellectual and moral values. What it should be is out of their radar. So those who make the laws today, they frame these laws to their own advantage or benefit. So the whole system, the whole legislation and anything around it fails. It's fallible. It allows for backdoors. It allows for nuances and favoritisms, and so there's a tremendous, that brings a tremendous necessity to have controls to minimize these fails. So the law is to control human passions that create wrongdoings. So now we have a control to control the control. It's becoming more complicated. A lot of times, the mechanisms of control to prevent and defend against possible fail in the law, a lot of times they are eliminated because the complaints that we can make go towards the same person that writes the law. So, for example, as if you have somebody here that you can complain about the law or suggest a variation of the law. That's what I call a complaint here. If this person denies completely because he wrote the law, and if you go up to the next level, if the next level is under the control of the same person of this level, what's the point? So you have this, a control one level up, another control two levels up. But if they're all managed by the same people and or group of people, what's the point? So human laws should address moral values, but they do not. They address behavior and attitudes. So instead of having a central common point of reference all the way on the top, which is the moral value, don't kill, period, we have variances and nuances. You can't kill. Yeah, but if this happens, then we treat it this way. If that happens, we treat it this way. If it's a combination of both, we'll treat it in another way. And we go adding and adding and adding mechanisms of shunt so we can shunt the law. And we never get to raise our moral standards because the laws are not forcing us to do that. Two people make the same mistake or commit the same crime. One of them gets treated one way, the other gets treated completely different, maybe not even go to jail. Why? Because they do not use the same reference. They're using behavior and attitudes as a reference, not moral value. Which brings us to the next thing. Justice becomes secondary. With the human laws that we have, or the tendency that is in place everywhere, again, everywhere, justice becomes secondary. Because if we do not address moral values, we're not addressing justice the way God does. We are addressing behavior and attitudes. And they don't get us anywhere. Here, they are not even an incentive for each one of us to be better, to step up morally, intellectually. It's a difficult thing. It's complicated. We will get past this. It's not going to be 5 minutes or a decade. It's going to be a long, long, long time. We'll get past that. We're going to have help from high evolved spirits that will from time to time incarnate here bringing their cooperation and their, integrating their moral values within our societies and teaching us how to do that. When you look at Jesus, for example, even though Christians in general don't follow what he taught, it's on everyone's mind. It's on everyone's mind. So that's the seed that was planted. So you see, the tree is not up and big or large yet. The seed was planted. Look at how long it takes. It will take longer. From here on, it will take longer. For a very long time, we will have laws addressing behaviors and attitudes. Progressively, it will change, but it's not a snap of fingers. It's not like this. No. It's going to take longer than a snap of fingers. Okay, so that's what I wanted to bring to you today. That's something for us to reflect upon, read more. Like I said, Spirit's book, there are actually five questions addressing the situation. And there's a tremendous amount of Spiritist literature addressing this too. It's something to have in mind always. Thank you very much for being with us. We will be here next week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. with another Spiritism, a closer look, right here on Kardec Radio. Thanks so much.